This is chapter 14, Stealing and Atonement. In Gandhiji's words, a relative and I became fond of smoking. Not that we saw any good in smoking or were very fond of the smell of cigarette. We simply imagined a sort of pleasure in emitting clouds of smoke from our mouth. My uncle had the habit, and when we saw him smoking, we thought we should copy his example. But we had no money, so we began to collect stubs of cigarettes thrown away by my uncle. The stubs, however, were not always available and could not emit much smoke either. So we began to steal coins from the servants' pocket money in order to purchase Indian cigarettes. In the meantime, we heard that the stalks of a certain plant were porous and could be smoked like cigarettes. We got them and began this kind of smoking. But we were far from being satisfied with such things as these. Our want of independence began to upset us. It was unbearable that we should be unable to do anything without the permission of our elders. At last, in sheer disgust, we decided to commit suicide. How were we to do it? From where we were to get the poison? We heard that datura seeds were an effective poison. Off we went to the jungle in search of these seeds, and we got them. Evening was thought to be an auspicious hour. We went to Kedarji Mandir, put ghee in the temple lamp, and had darshan, and looked for a lonely corner. But our courage failed us. Supposing we were not killed instantly, and what was the good of killing ourselves? Why not rather put up with the lack of independence? But we swallowed 2 or 3 seeds nevertheless. We dared not take more. Both of us fought shy of death and decided to go to Ramji Mandir to compose ourselves and to dismiss the thought of suicide. I realized it was not as easy to commit suicide as to think about it. The thought of suicide ultimately resulted in both of us bidding goodbye to the habit of smoking stubs of cigarette and stealing the servants' coppers for the purpose of smoking. Ever since I have grown up, I have never desired to smoke and always regard the habit of smoking as barbarous, dirty and harmful. I have never understood why there is such a rage for smoking throughout the world. I cannot bear to travel in a compartment full of people smoking. I become choked. But much more serious than this was the theft I was guilty of a little later. I stole the coins when I was 12 or 13, possibly less. The other theft was committed when I was 15. In this case, I stole a bit of gold out of my brother's amulet. This brother had run into a debt of about 25 rupees. He had on his arm an armlet of solid gold. It was not difficult to clip a bit out of it. Well, it was done and the debt cleared, but this became more than I could bear. I resolved never to steal again. I also made up my mind to confess it to my father, but I did not dare to speak. Not that I was afraid of my father beating me. No, I do not recall his ever beaten any of us. I was afraid of the pain that I should cause him. But I felt that the risk should be taken, and there could not be a cleansing without a confession. I decided at last to write out the confession, to submit to my father, and ask for his forgiveness. I wrote it on a slip of paper, and handed it to him myself. In this, not only did I confess my guilt, but I asked adequate punishment for it, and closed with a request to him not to punish himself for my offense. I also pledged myself never to steal in future. I was trembling as I handed the confession to my father. He was then confined to bed. His bed was a plain wooden plank. I handed him the note and sat opposite the plank. He read it through and tears trickled down his cheeks, wetting the paper. For a moment he closed his eyes in thought and then tore up the note. He had sat up to read it. He lay down again. I also cried. I could see my father's agony. If I were a painter, I could draw a picture of the whole scene today. It is still so vivid in my mind. Those tears of love cleansed my heart and washed my sin away. Then I could read it in nothing more than a father's love. But today I know it was pure ahimsa. When there is such ahimsa, it changes everything it touches. There is no limit to its power. This kind of sublime forgiveness was not natural to my father. I had thought that he would be angry, say hard things, and strike his forehead. But he was so wonderfully peaceful, and I believed this was due to my clean confession. A clean confession combined with a promise never to commit sin again is the purest type of repentance. I know that my confession made my father feel absolutely safe about me and increased his affection for me beyond measure.